Just for the purpose of this introduction, let's imagine you are an unethical kind of person and want to commit the perfect crime, meaning you want to get away with it. Maybe you want to commit a robbery, escape with the loot, and leave no trace whatsoever of yourself behind. You want to be in and out like a ghost and spend your plunder without ever being caught. Or perhaps you have murder on your mind, and you know the victim to be. With today's forensic technology, how could you do that and evade capture by the cops? Well, you might think about turning on that TV or firing up the laptop and watching a cop show. Will that help? We should let you know that this has been a big debate for some time regarding just how much cop shows might educate and so help criminals. We found evidence that a number of prosecutors and law enforcement have said they believe that these shows are making life easier for criminals, but we also found evidence that points to the contrary. Let us present our findings. So, the major concern of some police is that criminals, thanks to TV shows, are now much better at hiding DNA evidence. This has sometimes been called part of the CSI education effect, or just CSI effect. This is quite a broad term, however, and has often been related to matters of juries being influenced by the show CSI. The influence being that jurors often expect lots of DNA evidence, which in real life, that's often not the case at all. We won't discuss this issue today, and will concentrate only on if criminals pick up certain tips from the shows. Wayne Farquhar, a cop who had decades of experience with the San Jose Police Department in the US, has said in interviews that he has witnessed criminals over his time in the force using improved techniques to get rid of DNA evidence. These techniques have appeared in movies and on TV. He once said, "I see crooks more aware of protecting themselves against leaving DNA, whether it's by using gloves or masks, or the way they wipe down things and clean." So that's one option. We might ask, are criminals just getting better with time, or have TV shows directly influenced them? Let's imagine, like at the start of the show, that you wanted to off someone, maybe your boss. Perhaps you need to know a few things first. Do you think you should don plastic covers over your shoes and wear a white protective suit, such as was worn by Police Sergeant Sean Dignam at the end of the movie The Departed when he committed that final murder? Oh, spoiler alert. What if you want to get rid of the body and all traces of blood, hair, etc. from the victim or yourself? How do you clean up in this case? What chemicals will do the job? Where do you dump the body or weapons where they'll never be found? Well, perhaps a TV cop show might be helpful with a few things. This has been discussed over the years, with some people saying these TV shows do help criminals. Sometimes statistics have supported this, but as the saying goes, correlation does not always imply causation. Meaning just because numbers seem to support something, it doesn't mean that the link leads directly back to the cause. If over a 5-year period Americans got fatter on average and during that time ice cream sales went up, it doesn't necessarily mean ice cream is to blame for the increased weight. You have to look at many factors. For instance, some law enforcement officials said after CSI came out, fewer sexual assault cases in the USA were resolved over a certain period of time. Does this mean that the show helped the perpetrators of those crimes? Well, there is a correlation, but it doesn't necessarily mean CSI was the cause. Over the years since CSI came out, we found sources stating that quite a few women had said their assailants had gone to great lengths to make them shower or sometimes bleach their bodies. Was this because those assailants had seen that on TV? We also found a case of a double murder, and the killer was a devout fan of CSI. It said that he did a rigorous cleanup of the crime scene using chemicals, and he also got rid of the gun in a way that it couldn't be found, or so he assumed. He used blankets to prevent the spilling of blood, and on top of that, he did a good job ensuring the fibers from his clothes or his cigarette butts were not around the crime scene. He was caught in the end, so it didn't work out for him. Nonetheless, after that, some American news media talked to certain law enforcement officials who believed the show CSI and perhaps other similar shows were educating criminals. Why were more criminals cleaning up after themselves? A captain of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department told CBS News, "They're actually educating these potential killers even more. Sometimes I believe it may even encourage them when they see how simple it is to get away with it on television." In the same article, the chief of the criminal division at the Trumbull County Prosecutor's Office said, "People are getting more sophisticated with making sure they're not leaving trace evidence at crime scenes." We should say that most crimes do not involve such commitment to cleaning up the crime scene, and it's well known that most murders are crimes of passion or gang-related, and those are often very sloppy jobs. Cops said it's just some killers and other criminals that were getting better at clearing evidence. Some argue that there is a possibility that indeed a small number of murderers might have been educated somewhat, but the vast majority of killers are just not clever enough to do a comprehensive cleanup, or in their anger, they just don't feel inclined to do the work. One investigator even went as far to say most people who commit murder are pretty stupid. There's evidence that some victims have learned from CSI too, or at least one victim of a crime. One woman in the UK who had been sexually assaulted by a man and had been in his car had actually pulled out some of her hair and left it on the back seat. This led to his arrest and said that she learned that from watching CSI. The 18-year-old woman said she had even spat on the car seat. The assailant, a British Army soldier, got 11 years. The thing is, he had told the victim to wipe herself clean to destroy DNA evidence. She later told the media, "It sounds silly, but I've always been a fan of CSI programs. I've watched so many of them, I know what to do and how things work." After hearing that, you might think that if the victim can learn something, surely the perpetrator can learn something too. But just how much? Well, a team of psychologists at a German research facility wanted to know just that, and they spent a long time researching this, to the extent of analyzing crime scene statistics in the USA and Germany from the time these TV cop shows came on the scene. They also interviewed convicted criminals and asked them how they'd learned to evade arrest and if the cop shows helped. They actually said in the paper we interviewed experts, meaning criminals. The researchers also asked non-criminal participants to join their study. Some of the participants were self-confessed heavy consumers of crime procedural shows, while some others were non-consumers of such shows. First, the participants were asked to commit a mock crime, just some stealing. It was to see how well they committed the crime in terms of evading arrest. The researchers then set up a mock scene that looked as though a murder had been committed. The participants were asked to go in and clean up the crime scene. The research paper described it like this: "We also tested for forensic awareness with an explicit knowledge test. In the last experiment, we tested which factor predicted efficient criminal behavior the best. Subjects committed a mock crime and were tested for implicit knowledge as a function of age, gender, education, forensic crime series consumption, technical prowess, and personality." It sounds quite exciting, and we're sure you want to hear the results of this study. Okay, part 1. What about crime statistics in the USA and Germany since these shows came about? After looking at crime figures and clearance rates from the German Federal Bureau of Investigation and the American Federal Bureau of Investigation, the researchers concluded that after shows such as CSI started airing on people's TVs, there was no significant change to clearance rates, although trends did change. They said this couldn't be caused by the shows though. But get this, they also said, a large number of crimes go unreported or undetected and never make it into the official statistics. In Germany, 50% of murders go undetected. Consequently, one could argue that criminals whose knowledge they obtained from forensic crime series do not appear in the official crime statistics because they manage to evade detection. So that could mean criminals have been educated by these shows, but we can't really prove that's why they got away with their crimes. It's just impossible to say exactly how and why criminals avoided detection in the USA and Germany. As for asking the convicted criminals if the shows are of any use, they interviewed 24 such criminals. They first asked the criminals where they learned to avoid detection, such as where does one learn how to wear gloves or not leave DNA evidence. They asked them what were the best sources of information available as to getting away with crime. It turns out that while a lot of those criminals had watched CSI and other similar shows, none of them said they used it as a way to avoid police detection. When asked, they said the best place to learn the tricks of the trade were other criminals and friends. These guys were already in prison, so we expect much of their education comes from fellow prisoners. The prisoners did admit that perhaps TV shows could provide some learning opportunities, but they just had not tapped into those resources themselves. As for non-criminal participants committing a mock crime and trying to get away with it, some of whom were big fans of CSI and others that did not watch the show, the researchers found absolutely no connection with watching the show and not watching the show with committing a better crime or getting away with it. The mock crime scene was pretty well done, replete with a fake body, fake blood splattering, shell casings, door handles, etc. The researchers concluded both groups left a similar amount of forensic traces on both crime scenes. Out of interest though, they found that male subjects were better at cleaning up a crime scene than female subjects, while younger people were better than older people. Also, those with more education were better at cleaning up the scene, as were people who worked in technical professions. Those were mostly men too. You might conclude from this that if you're young and male and a technical kind of guy, you stand a better chance of getting away with a crime. The leader of this study said this in conclusion: "Over many years, it was presumed that certain links in this regard exist. Although there were no appropriate studies to prove this, we can now dispel certain myths that have been coursing through the media and other publications for the past 20 years because we're able to state with relative certainty that people who watch CSI are no better at covering their tracks than other people." So there you go. That's the most conclusive study conducted on this. Perhaps more criminals are wiping and cleaning and getting rid of evidence than before, and perhaps some criminals are just more calculating than others. This show, which doesn't always adhere to true procedure, may have helped a handful of people. But we might ask how many more criminals learn their tricks inside prison walls or when socializing with the criminal fraternity. Maybe, as the researchers said, criminals learning from shows such as CSI and other police procedural shows is just a myth. What about you? What if you learned from cop shows that would help you plan the perfect crime? Tell us in the comments. Now go watch Did OJ Commit Those Murders? Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.